safe streets, vibrant neighborhoods, successful business and commerce. These are things that make a healthy community. We are a diverse community, rural, suburban, urban, a multitude of languages and ethnicities, ages and experiences. We are a collaborative community. Public-private partnerships make us a model community that others want to follow. It is what makes us unique. It is what makes us strong. The employees of Kent County reflect our diversity and seek to serve our communities.
People in this county, in this area, we wrap our arms around each other. We come together to collaborate, to solve problems. We're all working for the good of the whole. And I think that's wonderful. And you can see it. You can see it as you drive around Kent County.
Our impact starts the day a baby is born and a birth certificate is issued, to protecting children from deadly diseases through vaccination, to the public safety and justice provided by law enforcement and the courts, to offering veterans services and caring for the elderly. Every day we work to keep our communities robust.
I think if you are somebody who's interested in serving your community, in building a strong knowledge base and a good group of people to work with, then the county is one of your best employment opportunities out there. It's been completely rewarding in every way I could possibly explain for 26 years, and I feel like I grow every single day still today.
Leading these dedicated employees, our 19-member Board of Commissioners and our County Administrator Controller, along with our elected officials and appointed department directors, placing emphasis on civic involvement, quality housing, vibrant neighborhoods, and strong, solid infrastructure to allow businesses to thrive. Professional, dedicated, collaborative, and innovative.
Behind the scenes, collaboration between foundations, charitable organizations, nonprofits, for-profit businesses, public sector demonstrated through the county, the city of Grand Rapids, the townships, all the cities and the villages in our area. If we don't come together, then we will not have the strength that we have today, and I only hope to build upon that.
Our aim is to make our communities the best they can be. We are involved in exciting development projects, sustainable recycling programs, and creative progressive prevention programming. We partner with elected officials, impacting policy ideas that become great achievements. We seek opportunities to reach out into the community and offer our services to help our residents make Kent County thrive.
Our relationship is solid, both from a staff standpoint at the county level as well as the Board of Commissioners. And they understand what we do and the benefits that we can do for the community, and vice versa. We couldn't do what we do without the help of Kent County.
While most of us are busy running our lives, Kent County's elected officials, administrator controller, and over 1,600 employees are serving the communities where we live our lives, so we can all have a place we are proud to call home. Kent County, its life well run.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to item 3, P, Public Affairs Associates Legislative Update. Becky Beckler.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here this morning. We have exactly 2 weeks until the election and 2 weeks until the session officially begins. So all good news on all fronts. Excuse me, sorry, let me get situated here. So the legislature will return immediately following the election. They'll come in that Wednesday and Thursday and meet. I wouldn't expect anything significant to happen. That's an opportunity for all 4 of the caucuses to hold their internal leadership elections. So that's what they'll spend most of their time doing. But for the legislative leaders in the House and the Senate and the governor's office, it's an opportunity for them to now begin to talk about what they want to accomplish during this lame duck session. It is always believed that if one of the chambers and or the governor's office flips to the other party, which would be from the Republicans to the Democratic Party, that the lame duck session could change significantly. If the Republicans were to retain all 3 branches, then it most likely be a very lame duck, because they would be able to return in January and follow what they want to accomplish in the next fiscal and the next year. However, it appears from the recent polling that the governor's office might flip. And if that does happen, then I think Republicans probably have a pretty significant agenda of policy items as well as political items that they'll want to accomplish before the end of the year. So that schedule could change, but I would anticipate a pretty aggressive December agenda. So as we look at that, I wanted to just go through some of the issues that we could anticipate. This certainly won't be all-inclusive. There'll be some that we don't know about that we'll have to catch up on as quickly as they're announced. But the first one is not necessarily a legislative item, but could be during the lame duck session. We have been following the Indigent Defense Commission and their activities recently. I think I've reported on this the last time I was here. We have some challenges with that as far as conclusions. We've come to some agreements, but we still need to work on some others. It appears that the Michigan Association of Counties has come to an agreement with the Commission on payment. They will have agreed to pay us 50% now and then 25% and 25% in 2019. That seems to, and it's a disbursement, not a reimbursement, which is a significant headway on that issue. What is unresolved are a couple issues. Is when does that 180-day clock begin? That's something that they appear to have punted for the moment, yet to be continued. And then also the commission wants a reporting requirement, which is a significant problem for many counties. So that's an issue we'll have to continue to have dialogue on. It's something that right now is within the commission. However, we have been in close contact with our legislative leaders, and so this might have to become a legislative issue where they step in and offer some sort of solution, since we seem to be unable to resolve some of these key issues that are very important on that issue. So I will continue to update you and work with you, and I know that we'll continue to have dialogue with our local legislators because they've been a significant impact on this. Representative Hewlin and Senator Hildebrand have been watching this issue very closely, so we'll want to continue to work with them should we need to do some type of a legislative solution during this lame duck session. So we're also watching a few other issues that we anticipate. One of them is a budget holdover dealing with personal property tax. There was a program created in 2014 as a result of changes that the legislature made to the industrial and commercial property tax. So they did a program that would hold counties harmless. That issue was not resolved in the budget as it typically is. It's a holdover. We have two competing versions. Representative Robert Hewlin has a bill that he has passed the House and is now in Senate Appropriations. However, Senator Hildebrand has a competing version that he would like to offer, and I think you'll see that come up in the Senate Appropriations when they return. The unique part about Senator Hildebrand's opportunity is that it does offer money to local public health departments, which is part of the 50-50 cost sharing that the state really has not met their obligation. It's a start to meet that. So that's a unique portion. It's just a different way in which you're combating the formula. Both of them, I think, are acceptable to Kent County. It's a good distribution. So we'll have to watch and see how our two champions work that out in the legislative process. Another issue that I talked about that had been on the legislature is raise the age. The House Law and Justice Committee did hold one hearing on the issue. While there is strong support for the policy of raise the age, the issue continues to be how do we pay for that? And it doesn't appear the legislature is going to have that solution by the end of the year. So it's unlikely that that bill will get to the finish line with some appropriations attached to it. So I would look to see that be reintroduced. It's still a priority for many legislators, but Senator Rick Jones, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, has indicated several times that even if the House does send it his way without appropriate funding for local units of government and the Sheriff's Office, he does not see or have interest in moving that forward until that's resolved. Sales tax on the internet is something that's already implemented. It's part of the Treasury Bulletin. It's something that we're watching closely. Sales tax on the internet is now required by entities that do business with the state of Michigan. It will garner about $200 million in additional new revenue. The governor has indicated that he plans to initiate legislation appropriating that additional revenue towards roads. One of the things that we were watching is the fact that when it comes to this piece, revenue sharing is connected to that. So we have a commitment from Treasury that they will not do anything that will harm that piece of revenue sharing. They're not increasing that money, but they've agreed not to touch any type of a revenue sharing formula when it comes to the sales tax formula. However, they are going to pursue this additional money going to roads. They've indicated that they want 60% to go to local roads. However, keep in mind, this is just the governor's proposal, and as soon as it's introduced, I'm sure that the legislature will want to make an impact on that conversation as well. So that's just the start of the conversation, not necessarily the finish of that conversation. Tipping fees, as I indicated in my last presentation, this is going to be a priority of the governor's office. It is something that is still under great consternation by both the House and the Senate. The Michigan Manufactured Association appears to be the entity that is pushing back on the governor's office. The reason is that the State Chamber and the Farm Bureau did come out in support of this proposal. Legislative leaders have a lot of concerns about this proposal, so they're seeking some type of alternative revenue, as well as the Michigan Manufactured Association. So we're watching this closely. Because the governor has indicated that he's not likely to approve any other bills until there's some resolution to this, I think he's stepping back somewhat, but not significant enough. So legislative leaders are clearly wanting to see how they might be able to resolve this issue. PFAS, it's something that certainly has been on the forefront in this area. Representative Gary Howell, who chairs the House Natural Resources Committee, has indicated recently that he does plan to hold hearings during the lame duck session. He wants to bring in state and national leaders and experts to educate his committee so that as they prepare to move legislation forward, they have all the facts and figures and the best possible information from stakeholders as possible. So we can begin to be able to have some conversation on that as well in the coming months. The year-end supplemental is getting all sorts of attention by all sorts of entities, including the governor's office. In talking with legislative leaders, there is no agreement on what a supplemental might look like. Matter of fact, legislative leaders aren't even talking to one another about this, but it appears that everybody else is talking about a year-end supplemental. So it's something that we're going to be watching closely. It could have implications on Kent County as far as what could be included in that. I know we're having conversations with our legislative leaders about what they might be thinking, but again, there's no agreement between the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader or the appropriations leaders as to what that supplemental might look like. I'm sure that some of that might have to do with what happens after the November elections, what happens with the close of books, how much money is available. All is going to be negotiated, both policy as well as political, but it's something that I think that we should be very mindful of as we move forward. The legislature will also need to deal with two issues that they addressed in the fall, and that was the two ballot initiatives that they decided to approve rather than have them go to the ballot. One is paid sick leave, and the other is the minimum wage. If you'll recall, they decided to approve those so that when they come back after the election, they could make small changes to that only by a simple majority. Had they allowed them to go to the ballot and they'd be approved, any changes that they wanted to make would have required a 2/3 majority, which they know could have been difficult. So they are working with business leaders so that when they come back in after the November elections, they can make what they believe would be small tweaks to those proposals. It did not get immediate effect, so neither proposal takes effect until I believe March 31st or mid-April. So there is some time, but we believe that the legislature will want to make some changes to those before the end of the year. Another issue that they're watching closely is a ballot initiative dealing with recreational marijuana. If you recall, the legislature also wanted to adopt that measure. However, the Republicans were unable to get enough votes in the House of which to approve that. So now making any changes to that would require a 2/3 majority. But the Senate Republicans do have bills in the works. What they want to do is put more structure that kind of aligns along with the medical marijuana as far as fees and structures to make sure that it's a very robust system in Michigan. So I think you could look for legislation around recreational marijuana should that initiative pass on November 6th. I think that really covers kind of the major issues that we anticipate. That's not clearly going to be all-inclusive. I'm sure there are going to be some issues that will be brought to our attention after the November election. I would be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Becky. You covered a lot. Appreciate all of that. Commissioner Vonk.
Yes, Becky, on the tipping fees, do you see something happening this year at the DPW? That'd be like a 10% increase in waste disposal, and I'm sure the residents would be really crying about that. We've had, tipping fees always been an issue anyway, and one of our biggest issues over time. And we've got some robust plans, as you know, and this would just be a wall preventing some of those plans. So.
You know, I think that's still yet to be decided, and I think some of the problem is, especially if you look at the composition of the House of Representatives right now, I think many of them would see this as a tax increase on its citizens. That's something that the House of Representatives has been very robust in and not supporting. So the governor has a lot of work to do, and it's clearly on the hands of this governor. The legislative leaders seem to be taking a step back and saying, this is your proposal, Governor, so you go get the votes. The Senate leader, Mike Knopf, who's going to be the bill sponsor, and he agreed to be the bill sponsor, even he has questions and believes that he's not excited about this proposal. What I probably most likely see is some type of a compromise version. I know that through the Michigan Manufacturers Association, some of the stakeholders are actually working on, is there another proposal that we could put before the governor that he would accept that isn't as taxing and as difficult to accept that this one is. So I think perhaps a compromise, but I could see where actually nothing happens too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Becky? Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Becky. The first thing you were talking about, the indigent defense, you talked about the 180-day clock, and could you refresh my memory of what that is?
Absolutely, and I think probably those behind me might be able to explain a little further, but I understand that there's a question about the 180-day clock is the clock that starts at when you actually have to start implementing your program and the amount of time you have to do that. So if the clock starts when you only get 50% of the funding, that could have some negative implications upon the county, rather than when it starts after 100% funding. I hope that's correct assessment.
Right, Paul or Matthew could probably help affirm that. Yeah, okay.
Then regarding the internet sales tax, you talked about revenue sharing, and is the implication of what you were saying that some of that sales tax revenue would be shared with counties as part of the revenue sharing plan? I didn't catch what the connection
Part
was
of the
there.
sales tax component is how it's dispersed. Some of that money comes back through revenue sharing as well as education. And there was a fear that if the governor wanted to mess with that current formula, that it could have some negative implications upon the revenue sharing portion. However, the Treasury has indicated that they don't plan to affect the current formula. It would only be the additional revenue of $200 million that they anticipate going forward. While we would like to see additional money going to revenue sharing, at least we've got that baseline that there won't be any attempt to cut our funding through that.
I have
Another
one more,
one?
but it's a general one if
Sure.
other people want to ask questions.
Go ahead.
All right. Recognizing this is probably a bit of a crystal ball question, but wondering if there's things you feel like we should be thinking about that would be advantageous for the county to press on if there's a new a governor from a different party, if those dynamics change. What are the opportunities for Kent County on some of the legislative priorities that we have that we maybe want to focus on during lame duck? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, certainly. I guess given the crystal ball theory,
Yeah.
that should Gretchen Whitmer be victorious on November 6th, clearly local public health is going to be a priority for her. She talks specifically about clean water, clean air, PFAS. So it's an opportunity when she begins to put together what that administration looks like and how that's put together, whether that becomes a Department of Public Health, how it used to be. We have some opportunity to talk about what could be helpful specifically to Kent County when it comes to PFAS, when it comes to lead cleanup, when it comes to those important initiatives. I think that new governor might have a vision that we could get our arms around. There might be opportunities in this lame duck session, depending on really what that lame duck session looks like, where we could have some impact. For instance, PFAS, once they start those hearings and legislation begins to move or should begin to move, how could that legislation have positive impacts upon Kent County? How can we do that? So yes, I think with each governor, there are some opportunities in which some of our priorities could line very nicely.
guess if I could follow up, what I was thinking a little more in line with is, you know, if for example, Democrats take a majority in the House and the governorship, we lose potentially some leadership that we have connections to in West Michigan. So are there things that during that lame duck we should take advantage of with the connections that we have right now? And I heard you talking a little bit about, well, under a potential Governor Whitmer, what would that look like? But using the resources that we have now during that lame duck and the connections that we have to some leadership, anything there that you can think of?
Well, certainly we've been very communicative with our legislators when it comes to, for instance, our PHP and some of the challenges that we have there. That might be a good opportunity to talk with Representative Hewlin, Representative Affendulis about what is an opportunity there to work with that administration as far as, are there things that the administration can do to benefit that situation going forward? That would be one area I think that we could look at, because it's something that our legislators have been very involved with and very hands-on. So that would be one opportunity. I guess I'm hesitating because we just don't have a vision of what lame duck could look like. But it's certainly something that we could talk to our legislators during that month of November as far as what are their visions. That's one of the issues. I think if there's PFAS funding, if there's lead funding, how could that look for the county? That could also be a priority in this lame duck session as well.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
So to follow up on Jim's question, so the governor's office switches, but then the current party holds the House and Senate. Is it going to be as toxic as ever? I mean, is anything going to be able to get done?
I do not believe it will be a toxic environment, and a lot of it revolves around the personalities of those that will be elected. Both Attorney General Bill Schuette as well as Gretchen Whitmer are former legislators, so they understand the legislative process and the importance of it. Both have had to work with legislative leaders. Gretchen Whitmer has been a legislative leader in the minority, so she understands. She comes with actually relationships with Republicans as well as Democrats. Bill Schuette comes with relationships with I don't see the toxic environment simply because of the personalities of the legislative leaders. I think you're going to see leaders that want to work together and get things done. I think you're going to see, if it's a Jim Ananich in the Senate, who's the Democratic leader right now, he works very well with his Republican counterparts. A Senator Shirkey as the next Senate Majority Leader, that could be a little bit more challenging. He has a little bit more challenging personality, but he also understands the art of the deal and the fact that you're going to have to come across the aisle, and if you want to get things accomplished, you're going to have to make strides with the other parties. So I don't see it yet being a toxic environment, and I hope I don't have to eat my words in a few months on that level.
Okay, then another issue, you know, we talk about leadership in West Michigan and how fortunate we are. And yet for years we've been battling this John Ball Zoo issue. And I called every single one of them that represented West Michigan. And only one, Senator Hildebrandt's office, had the courtesy to call back. Where does that issue stand, and why is this such a problem for our West Michigan legislators to get behind this?
That appears to be a very controversial issue, and a lot of it is, I'm going to be very honest with you, there is a sitting member of the state Senate who chairs the Senate Agricultural Committee who owns a very small zoo that has stopped this issue. He is not able to run for re-election, so I see January of 2019 as a whole different environment because you don't have a sitting legislator with an agenda that this legislator has. When you have somebody that has a small zoo and is standing up for the small zoos and causing this opposition, I think that has been the stumbling block. So I think in January 2019, you'll see a different environment on this issue.
See, but we always hear that. I mean, the same thing with the dark stores. You know, the chairman was holding up. I mean, this continues to go on, but at the end of the day, the heart of the issue is the zoo was eliminated by a typo in the original law. And we're not talking about a small zoo, we're talking about a sizable zoo. But once again, our area legislators are just quiet on it. And, you know, why don't we flex some of our muscles?
Well, that's certainly something I'd be willing to have that conversation with, and perhaps that during a lame duck session is something that could be negotiating. The beauty of a lame duck session is everything's up for negotiation, and if it becomes a large enough priority for key legislators, that tends to go to the top of the list. So that's something that we could put on that list of something we want to have accomplished by the end of the year.
That's the first time I've heard lame duck described as something of beauty. I think it's just something that's a worse example of democracy.
We're optimistic. I'm calling it scary duck. Any other questions? I just had a couple comments. We do have our breakfast with legislators on November 9th to kind of reiterate some of our priorities, so that is coming up. And then we do have a couple budget issues that we would love to try to accomplish in that supplemental. One of them is a $6 million lead request. So we do have that in there, and then also the risk funding for LRE. So there are some significant, issues that we would like, if we can get that supplemental moving. And I know Wayman will talk to you about it more, and we'll talk to them on the 9th, but just wanted to remind everyone that we do have some asks out there, so. All right, thanks so much, Becky. Great report. Moving on to item 4, information technology performance measurement update. Welcome.
Good morning, Tim Beck, IT Director. A little vertically challenged here behind the podium. But, by way of introduction, I was putting my thoughts together this morning, or over the last couple of days. It made sense that I'd probably give you a quick 20-second overview, since I don't know you all that well. I've been with the county now 10 years in December, and most recently in the IT Deputy Director position for 5 years, where I had the good fortune to work and be mentored through by Craig Paul. So moved into this role in June and have enjoyed every minute of it, frankly. It's been a challenge, of course. It's never boring, but certainly appreciative of all of the support I continue to receive from administration and other county leadership. So moving on to the performance metrics a little bit, with a 5-minute update, there's no way, to go into the requisite level of detail, I think. But so I know you have them in front of you. I'm happy to answer questions as it relates to that. But I wanted to touch a little bit on the significant accomplishments that are attached to that. The reason I selected those particular ones has been, I think it highlights a couple of different aspects of information technology. One, the tremendous talent we have. Second, the relationships we've built with other departments, which is tremendous. And then thirdly, the technology investments that the county has made. So to that end, I wanted to just touch on a couple of those, and I won't read them verbatim, certainly, but we had a big win over in drains, moving them to a paperless, or let's say increasingly paperless workspace. They're back scanning some of the historical documents. Anything new as far as drains documentation now is being scanned into OnBase. It had the added advantage, they actually reclaimed, a pretty good sized chunk of real estate as far as a room filled with file cabinets. And we will continue that now that it's implemented. We will extend that a little bit into the mobility aspect for their field staff, and then integrate a little bit more fully with their GIS, existing GIS. So that was a big win for us. The eWarrant project, that one's a little bit new. That's the second item there. We affectionately refer to it as eWarrant. This was really a partnership that IT had, sponsored primarily by the Sheriff's Department and working with prosecutors, moving them to a process by which warrants are entered electronically and then routed really paperlessly through the prosecutor's office. This was launched in a limited fashion last week, and they're doing, let's say they're getting their feet wet as that process really follows and comes mature. And then eventually, the intention is to roll that out hopefully to the other law enforcement municipalities around the county. So another big win for us, and a huge efficiency in terms of time in that respect. The third highlight there is really our security team, our IT security team. We are one of the fortunate counties in Michigan to have a dedicated IT security team. And so we have, it's taken a while, I think, to get some traction there. We've had a couple of big wins here in 2018 as we start to wrap up, one of them being our security awareness program, which we call KnowBe4, is the product we are using, and that really encourages users to take a more active role in our IT security strategy, which is key for us. An interesting metric, if you're a note taker, The county receives about 50,000 emails per day from outside the county. We send about 20, but we receive about 50. And of those 50, 1,000 are malicious or suspect, meaning once it gets passed through all our IT security, the user has to make a determination. Is it safe? Should I open it? Should I not open it? So 1,000 decisions a day by end users approximately. You know, the old adage, you know, a hacker's only got to be right once. We have to be right 100% of the time. So KnowBe4 has really helped us to increase our awareness and train users. And that kind of gets to the work-life balance. What's good at work from an IT security perspective is usually good at home. So, so that's been a win for us. Facilities, the service desk last year in 2017 implemented a ticket tracking system. And we've extended that capability now into our facilities management area, where they can enter preventative maintenance requests, work orders, and follow kind of the same workflow, the same platform, and leverage that investment a little bit. So that has been great for us. They like it, and we should hopefully see increased usage of that as we go forward. A little bit more behind the scenes, we did complete a major network upgrade to our core infrastructure. Last year, we moved a data center in mid to late 2017, and this project had been temporarily put on hold, but we completed it here in mid-2018, and we've been happy with that. We maintain active data centers, which is kind of a technical nomenclature, but we have 2 data centers, I think most of you probably know, but they are active at all times, and so they are complete replications of each other. So from a performance aspect, it really allows us to support the public safety initiatives, excuse me, that we need to do. So we were proud of that one. And then a couple of other ones just wrapping up there real quick. The financial team has continued to support A360, Advantage 360, which is our ERP system. Last year we had launched the financial, or a couple of years ago, the financial aspect of that. This year we released the HR component, which is employee self-service and a couple of other things. So a significant amount of time from our financial group in IT that has supported that go live as well. And then lastly, on their Access Kent has been the recipient of the new dog licensing application that Webtex has built for us. This is a huge win for them. The old process was clumsy. Veterinarians didn't like it. The shelter staff didn't like it. And I'm probably treading a little bit in Adam's area here, but it's worth noting it's a huge win for us from really a county-wide perspective. Increased revenue generation through dog licensing, a lot of benefits to that. But the last bullet point there I think is significant. Webtex continues to manage over 60 web applications. A lot of that, excuse me, is behind the scenes, but they do tremendous work for us as well. So that's a little bit about the accomplishments we've got sitting out there. Looking ahead to some of the challenges and opportunities I think we've got for the rest of 2018 and going into 2019. Of course, the rate of technology, it's no secret, continues to outpace our ability to implement it. And I don't see that changing, so we wrestle with what's relevant, what should be implemented, what can we reasonably expect to do successfully. That will continue to challenge us. Developing a culture of innovation. The tendency, sometimes when we go through departments and we talk to people, they say, well, I've always done it this way. Well, that's great, but what now? So how do we avoid that complacency argument and increase innovation? I think improving proactiveness is key for us. Employee recruitment and retention. We were fortunate in 2018. We only have 1 retirement pending. So we were a little bit removed from the recruitment issues that we've seen in the past. We know, though, that there is an aggressive IT market, certainly in West Michigan, and we compete directly with the private sector, so I don't anticipate those issues going away as needs come up. And then lastly, certainly, we talked about IT security, but a lot of the regulatory issues that we are forced to comply with as far as criminal justice information, HIPAA, PCI, they tax us, from an interpretation standpoint, from an implementation and funding standpoint, and a best practice standpoint. Those will continue to be around as well. So, and then kind of looking ahead here, what's on the plate? The performance measurements you have in front of you are interesting, but I think the reality is that as we start 2019, it's probably worth looking at, are we measuring ourselves the right way? IT measurements continue to change and evolve as technology does, so I think we need to take an honest assessment if we're measuring the right things. An example is, as much as we just talked about IT security, we don't measure ourselves on IT security. That needs to change. So if we benchmark ourselves against some of the other larger counties on the east side of the state, they do some pretty interesting things as far as measuring IT goes. So we need to take a hard look at that. We have a storage replacement. We're going through the proposal process right now, and that's a significant investment for finances, for people time, and then, of course, it's our enterprise storage. So we talk about on-base. It all lives in the storage environment. So that's a huge one for us. Talking about culture change for a minute, we are replacing our voicemail system in 2019, which is all the front-end menus that the public uses to get to us. So a lot of what we do tends to be behind the scenes. This is one that has a public-facing component from the system outage, system implementation perspective. So that's one we treat very, very seriously. So we've got that coming up, and then 2020 will be an entire phone system replacement, again, with one of the few things we do that touches everybody across the county. So you'll hear more about that going forward. And then lastly, just continuing to use on-base expansion and utilization. So it continues to be, the well-regarded pet within IT as far as conversations go. But wrapping up, that's a little bit about us. I appreciate your time this morning and happy to answer questions you might have.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim? Commissioner Vonk?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on retrieving information by staff and senior persons in each department. Can that be done off of the phone on the weekend? If something comes up, can they pull that up now? I know a while back I had a need for some information and everything was shut down and there was no way to retrieve that information. Can that be done now with new technology and whatnot? Or
Yeah.
are we moving? This happened to be the clerk's office.
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. Remote access by employees and staff is something that we have a couple of different ways to do it right now. I wish it was more consolidated, and not everything can be on the list, but that's one we are taking a look at. We do have the ability for staff to get access to information after hours through a remote access process. So if that's something that people struggled with, we're certainly happy to work with them.
So it's getting better, you say?
We're looking at some different avenues to make it easier. The process we have now, I won't say it's antiquated, but it requires a little bit more user intervention than perhaps we might like. So I think as we go forward, it will become easier for staff, yes. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Korndike?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report this morning, Tim. The two things that frustrate me the most about IT is, number one, the cost, which you have no control over. And then the other thing is the ongoing problems that occur and how those are solved. So I'm looking at page 9 of your report, and it said the number of problem tickets in 2016 looks like you only completed 65%, but then it looks like in 17 you completed 91%. So what do you attribute that success to, and are you going to be able to accomplish the same results in 18 that you did in 17?
Yeah, it's a good observation. I think to answer your question, yes. A couple of things I think the new ticketing system has allowed us to do things a little bit differently that have assisted us in being better. We kind of refocused our service desk staff a little bit on being service-oriented first and not kind of projects or some of the other things they might like to do second. And I think we've seen a reduction or a better response to things in that regards.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kallman?
Thank you, Chair. Could you just walk me through on, take the drain office as an example. When we digitize records, what's our redundancy and backup plan, and how would we get access to that information if the need arose?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I mentioned earlier we've got active data centers. So really what that means is that when we tier our applications and we say which ones are most critical to us, public safety is one, on-base is another one is in terms of an enterprise application. So we would call that a tier 1 application. So the data associated with those is replicated real time between both of those data centers. And that might answer your question indirectly. But so basically it's real-time access to one or the other. And then in addition to that, we also take snapshots and nightly backups as well.
Great, thank you.
That answer the question?
It does.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tim? Commissioner Callan?
Thank you, Chair. Tim, just, you were talking about how kind of the environment changes, and one of the things that occurred to me on page 8, the indicators of efficiency, servers supported per staff. 20 years ago when I was sitting in this seat, that meant something different, I suspect, than it does now. Physical boxes of servers. And my question kind of is, how much of our storage is in the cloud, off-site? How much of it is in physical boxes here? Can you give some sense of that?
In terms of servers or storage, I just want to make sure I understand correctly. Or
Well,
maybe both.
What's the definition of servers here?
A server, we would classify a server today is essentially just basically kind of a CPU with no data attached to it. You know, very few of our physical servers actually have storage directly attached to them. That storage is living in a big cabinet
All right.
in the data center.
So how much of our storage is actually here in Kent County versus somewhere else?
The 100% of it. We currently don't have any critical data stored in the cloud. It's both in our 2 data centers today. We do have a cloud-first strategy as it relates to, well, let me back up a little bit. Some of our financial data that we use with our hosted system for A360 is stored in the cloud. But wherever we have responsibility for a server, it is in our data center.
And email is not here?
Correct. That's hosted by Microsoft, so.
All right,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep.
Any other commissioner questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Tim. Appreciate your update. On to item 5, Parks Performance Measurement Review. I'll bring up Roger.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy to be here and present performance measurement review for Parks Department. Get going here. So overview of the presentation, we'll do alignment with board priorities, key performance measurements, significant budget issues, significant accomplishments, key collaborations, and a look ahead. Board priorities are at the top portion of the slide. The bottom portion is the mission statement of Kent County Parks. A number of you during the leadership survey that you took or participated in for the Park Master Plan suggested some changes to the mission statement. And when that is adopted in the next master plan, then we'll incorporate the adjustments at that time. Stable revenues, priority of the board. Sustainable funding is part of our mission statement, and we take that very seriously and trying to generate funds and find different funding for the park system. Efficient use of resources. I think we do an excellent job of using the resources that we're given and tracking that through the season. Vibrant partnerships. I think we do an amazing job with the types of partnerships that we find around the community, whether it's financial or volunteer. And high quality of life. The department enhances the quality of life in Kent County, accessible parks and trails that amply meet the needs of the future generations. Key goals and metrics. Improve the diversity and quality of recreation opportunities. This happens to be a picture of the newer 900-foot boardwalk at Pickerel Lake. So we routinely try to renovate, improve what needs improvement, develop new things along the way. In terms of the master plan and implementing the action items that are part of the master plan, we look at that and try each year to implement various elements of the action plan. Some of that is based on what funding is available. Some of that is based on priority within a park and or volunteers that may be doing the work on our behalf. Over the years, we've tried to develop work teams that are able to do in-house construction, and that served us very well. Uses our funding in an economical way. So we've planned on completing 10 of the projects this year. Acquiring parklands, green spaces, and trails, corridors. This is always a challenge, and just a sort of a long-term process and how we go about acquiring lands and getting trail corridors. But given our recent survey work that we did with the community, it is much appreciated and a priority. So years ago, the board established a long-term goal of acquiring 7,500 acres. We are nearing that, and while this year we're probably not going to acquire any land, that's just because of a timing issue, and then there'll be a lot more land acquired next year. So, for, you know, some communities, counties particularly, are the ones that are acquiring land versus municipalities, cities. Over the years, we've acquired about 3,500 acres over the last 20 years or so. Some communities really don't go after land at all, and other communities have, Ottawa County has acquired about 6,500 acres, so it's just different for different communities. We're also looking at increasing and diversifying our funding source. This happens to be a picture of a retaining wall at Dwight Liddell Park. It's 100 years old plus, and DEQ funding is it's a little newer to us, only because it takes certain types of projects to capture DEQ funding. So this is gonna, we will be working on this in this coming year, but it's a different funding source for us, and we're about $1.2 million in terms of capturing money for this project and Dutton Park, which is currently being done. About 40% of our total budget comes from revenues that we generate within the system, and that's park reservations, that's golf course, campground, and Millennium Park holds a number of events that are more special use type events, and so we try to get 40. It depends exactly how we close the year out and what events might come and whether we're 42 or 43. Increase and diversify funding sources. We'll look for $500,000 in outside sources, and we've done a pretty good job of that in terms of the past few years. Meeting that goal, and more than meeting that goal. Next year will be significantly more because we'll have some DNR grants coming in for land acquisition. Collaborate with outside agencies and organizations. We do a tremendous job working with outside groups. A lot of that is done through our volunteer coordinator. And we use all sorts of groups. There are corporations, there are service groups. We work with some groups that have special needs, and that's a unique opportunity for them to get out in the park system. Efficiently provide a quality 18-hole golf course for the general public. Kaufman is routinely held in high regard in the golfing community. We are at the mercy of the weather, and we're looking for at least 30,000 rounds a year. We can lose 1,000 rounds a week on a rainy week. So when we have bad weather, our business goes down and the sheriff's department goes up. So revenue to cost ratio of at least 1.05 and we're going to meet that. Again, we haven't closed the year out, so we don't know exactly where we're going to land. Efficiently provide a range of enjoyable recreation opportunities at Millennium Park that are easily accessible. Millennium, 49%, our survey said, for our master plan, 49% of the respondents' households had visited Millennium Park in the last year. And I think that's pretty amazing that one park attracts that. We used to track zip codes. We don't anymore, but we used to track zip codes that came to the beach. And 1/3 of the zip codes were GR zip codes. So the GR Marathon that was this past weekend, much of that route is run through the trails of Millennium Park. We attract other marathons. We get people from all over the country that come to run those marathons. And there are a number of other events that we have people from around the state to come here and use the park. Cost ratio for running the park. I mentioned the other day, it's the most expensive park that we have to operate, but on a net basis, it's the cheapest because we generate that much revenue at Millennium. So it varies a little bit depending on what type of events we may have at the park in any given year. Or beach attendance, that'll make that number vary a little bit. We are working on a large event for 2019, and hopefully if we can get that, then we'll do very well. Beach attendance. We try to get 15% of the total attendance as part of our splash program. And our splash program, we hand out approximately 50,000 coupons to Kent Intermediate School District before school lets out each season. They distribute it to the various schools in the county that they serve. And it's aimed toward, originally it was aimed toward kids who are on a low-cost or no-cost lunch program. And then that got a little awkward with the teachers in the school because you can't give it out you can't give a coupon out to everybody but 3 people in the classroom. So what we did, we used to do K through 6, so we just lowered it to K through 5, and we give it out to everybody. And the number to me is astounding that there are 50,000 kids on that type of program in Kent County. That boggles my mind. But the program does allow them to visit the beach for free. Kids and the adults can come for free. And they also get a discount on watercraft if they want to try a kayak or something like that. Increase awareness and use and support of Kent County Parks. This is one of our volunteer groups from Davenport University. We work with other school groups, and again, any group we can work with, we try to make a project work that interests them. So some groups want to just work one morning a week or an afternoon or a weekday or a weekend. Other groups want to do a 1 day a month type effort. So we try to fit them in where we can. Volunteer hours, try to meet 9,000 hours. Usually we're well above that, and that just sort of depends on how each season goes. But there are a lot of groups that like to come and volunteer for Kent County Parks. In terms of our email list and subscribers to the newsletter, we try to increase that each year, so we're nearly 22,000 addresses. Budget issues. You know, we're a system that is nearly 100 years old, and so we, you know, just maintaining the grounds, it's just like everybody in their house. You gotta keep up what you have. And land acquisition and opportunities to acquire land when it's available. All challenges financially. Significant accomplishment. This summer we completed the Fred Meyer M6 trail connection. That was no small project. The two cranes on the right side of the slide, they're putting a bridge over active railroad track. So we dealt with MDOT, we dealt with active railroad. Not the easiest thing to do. It took nearly 2 years to be able to put this together. But this completes what we can do with M6 trail. We've completed a family restroom. It was part of a CIP project, and one of the things we missed the curve at Millennium Park in terms of family restrooms, and maybe we just didn't notice. But we have a lot of parents or caregivers with adult, either seniors or it may be a mom with an adult special needs son, and they can't just go into the normal restrooms. And so we created 2 family restrooms, and those have just been a real hit. So probably we'll see some more of those as CIP requests in the future. Not every park can do that, but there are some other parks that can use it. White Liddell Park reconfiguration or recreation. This is a project that started several years ago with the replacement of the old maintenance building that you see at the upper left. The new maintenance building at the bottom left is something that we built in-house. Again, it shows our ability to do things on a budget. And Fallsburg Park, this purchase was done at the end of last year. The right side of the road is Fallsburg Park. The left side of the road used to be private. And this is on the way into where the stone arch is and the shelter house is. This is Fallsburg Park Drive. And the land came up for sale because of an estate situation. So had we not purchased it, you'd have 3 houses on the left side of the road. And both from a visual standpoint and from managing the park and managing conflicts with neighbors, it was the right thing to do to purchase this land. So look ahead. Pioneer Trail connection. Pioneer Trail goes from Muscatawa, which is around the Marne area, to it connects the Muscatawa Trail to the White Pine Trail. And it is built from and in place from Ottawa County to Alpine Avenue. We will start working on a project that extends it east from Alpine Avenue down to West River Drive, and then another project will run along West River Drive and connect to North Park, which is the connection to the White Pine Trail. Hazy Cloud expansion, that's something that will happen. One of the two purchases, or maybe both purchases, will happen next year. So those are both DNR grants. And then I previously mentioned Dwight Liddell Park. The 100-year-old wall on the right side holds, actually creates like a bathtub. So when the creek rises, it floods the park, and there isn't a good way to get the water out of the park. There's some drain pipes, but they're just not that big. So our goal next year is to remove the concrete walls, and rather than to replace them for $7 million, what we're gonna do is regrade the slope of down to the creek. I'm sure there are people that are in the park that don't even know the creek's there because they can't see it. So we're gonna regrade and come down to the creek. That will eliminate the need for the wall. It's gonna be a, it'll be quite a project, and the community already knows. We've talked to the DDA, and they're well aware of what's going on, and we'll work with them to make sure that they have the space they need to do their chicken meals that they do 3 times a year. Lowell Regional Park expansion, this is a DNR grant that decisions should be made yet this December at the Trust Fund Board. And this is proven, this is one of the original purchases that we started with in 1998. The same family that we started with. This is just how long it takes. But we engaged Calvin College to do a floristic study, and that measures the quality of plant life and species. And they've never seen anything like this. It's one of the highest in the state, and merits not the farm field, but the trees. It merits statewide recognition. So once we get land acquired, we will be careful on how we actually develop that portion of the park. Any questions?
All right. Thanks, Roger. Commissioner Bonk.
Thank you, Chair. Good report, Roger. If we had, money wasn't a problem, and we could develop a couple parks on the eastern side of the county, baby millenniums or junior millenniums, and either 1 or 2 parks, which, if your dreams were to come true and you could do that, what park would that be, and what would you think about?
If I could snap my finger, we would have Hazy Cloud all acquired. That's still going to be several years in process. And the long-term goal of Hazy Cloud is to go over the river, over the Grand River, and connect to Roselle. And we've been working with Ada Township, and they're well aware of that. That would be a great project, doing something at Lowell. We haven't developed Lowell Regional yet because we really haven't had the critical mass of land. The portion we're buying right now is sort of the donut hole, and we had a U shape, but we didn't have the center. So now we are acquiring the center, and that might be another project that it might not be Millennium. It'll look different. Ideally, what we'd like to do with Lowell is to go due east with a trail, connect to the Youth Fair property that they purchased, connect to what's called the Elmdale line, which is it's a abandoned railroad that goes north-south. It goes into Lowell, and then that connects into trails that have been developed Lowell to Owasso, and Lowell north to Greenville. So those are the long-range ones.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. You'd said the land acquisitions are through DNR grants. The money for those grants come out of the trust fund?
Yes.
Any other resources that the state apply to that?
Not for acquisition. That's really the trust fund.
Is it, I mean, when you look at that, you've got a large state. I mean, I'm assuming they're highly competitive. Does the DNR try to spread the money around fairly, if that can even be done?
Yes. I think they try to do it fairly. They understand the reality and the politics of life. They score it, and I think there's a scoring process that takes subjectivity out of it as much as possibly can happen. We have to meet certain criteria. That's one reason that we do reasonably well, and Ottawa County does reasonably well on acquisition, because we have the types of properties that score reasonably well. But the trust fund does try to spread it around geographically. The members of the trust fund board are geographically spread, and then they have a small project category. So we may be looking for something that's in the millions, and yet they have, if you're a smaller community and need something for 100,000, that's part of their program too.
When you have your number of 7,040 acres and it's parklands, green spaces, trail corridors, is that all together, or is that just parklands and trail corridors or something different, or is it all?
All together.
It's all together. So I've always been curious when people say green spaces. What is our definition of green
Well,
space? Is it just something that we can look at? Is it just in hold to develop, habitat protection, all the above?
Most of it would be parkland that is yet to be developed. That's something for the future.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Just continuing on from Commissioners Vonk and Ponstein, what natural resource trust fund grants are we making this year?
We have one in the works right now that is, it's Hazy Cloud.
Okay, it's what was up here on the map, in red. Okay, anything else?
No, that's the one that's in the works. We got approval for it, but at 50% 1 year and 50% the next year in terms of funding timeline. So we're working with them on the project agreement, and what we may submit. April 1st is always the timeline to submit. So what we may submit in the future, this coming year, we're not quite sure yet. It always depends on who the willing seller is. It always does.
Okay, and so our 50% is in the current budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably more of a comment. First of all, I've been a big fan of parks and Parks Department over the years. And the one probably frustration that I've had for a long time, particularly since Millennium was put into place, is that recognizing that although many of our parks are far out, Fallsburg, Townsend being classic, plus the new regional parks, there's a significant piece of our population, of the folks that we represent, that it's very difficult to access those parks, significantly because our transportation, our public transit system is limited to our six cities. Millennium feels like it's a little bit different. Millennium has such a wide variety of things for people to do. And it's frustrating to me that our public transit system does not give a lot of people access to that park, which is a huge community resource. And a lot of people can't get to it. And I was struck when we took the little minibus tour there, many of us did, a few weeks ago, and talking to one of my colleagues, didn't realize that the bus doesn't run there. So there's tons of people that live in the city of Grand Rapids that don't have private transportation, a car. Yeah, some days you could ride your bicycle there, but I would really like to encourage us to figure out what we can do to encourage that transit access to that amazing resource. Recognizing it potentially, I don't know how many more people would access the park as a result of that, but I think it's something that we owe to our community to figure out how more people could access that, given better transit.
When the park first opened, I think it was the first full summer, there was, for a period of time, a bus route out there. And I'm a little foggy in all the details right now. Maybe it was, and it wasn't self-sustaining, which is something that the bus system says you're going to have. And, whether it was Millennium was new enough and people didn't know what was out there, I don't know. But, we'd love to see something out there if it could ever happen.
All right, any other questions for Roger? All right, seeing none, thank you, Roger, for your update, appreciate it. On to item 7. Oh, I'm sorry, on to item 6, appointments for the Kent District Library Board and the Front of the Court Citizens Advisory Committee.
Yes, this is a request to recommend to the board to appoint Alexandra Polk to the Front of the Court Citizens Advisory Committee to fill an unexpired 3-year term ending December 31, 2020, and Charles Myers to the Kent District Library Board Region 5 to fill an unexpired 4-year term ending December 31, 2018, and Sherry Gelrith Watts to the Kent County District Library Board Region 8 to fill an unexpired 4-year term ending December 31, 2021. Citizen vacancies have occurred on the Kent District Library Board and the Front of the Court Citizens Advisory Committee due to recent resignations. An interview team consisting of Commissioners Bolter, Korndike, and Talon reviewed applications and interviewed selected candidates. The interview team is recommending the appointments of Alexandra Polk to the Front of the Court Citizens Advisory Committee, Charles Myers to the Kent District Library Board Region 5, and Sherry Gelrith Watts to the Kent District Library Board Region 8.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Korndike, do we have a second?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Vonk. Any questions or comments? All right, Commissioner Taylor?
Well, just a comment. I was privileged to serve on that committee and continue to be amazed at the quality of folks that apply for these positions. And sometimes you think, is it worth bringing people in? Is it worth spending the time doing interviews? People were outstanding, and we were so impressed with those interviews. One person even brought in visual aids. They so wanted this job. It was a pretty cool thing. So part of that is our ongoing efforts to recruit people, to encourage people to be a part of county government, and we need to keep up those efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 7, Commissioner Miscellaneous. Do we have any miscellaneous today? Really? Okay. Well, I just have one, kind of to dovetail on Commissioner Talon. We do have to start our process of reappointments to all the various commissions and committees in our county. I'm announcing 3 subcommittees, breaking up our legislative team here into Subcommittee 1, myself, Commissioner Womack, and Commissioner Kallman. Subcommittee 2, Commissioner Steck, Skaggs, and Ponstein, and Subcommittee 3, Korndike, Talon, and Vonk. So you will be getting your binders here in the next week or so, and we'd like to start the interview process for those subcommittees that you're assigned ideally have those interviews done before Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving's early this year, so we do have a little bit more time. And then ultimately, we would make those final recommendations to our December legislative, and then it'd be final and board in January for them to start all of their terms. So, stay tuned for that. And then I also had Commissioner Steck wanted me to convey that he is up actually at the CMH conference presenting on the LRE and some of the challenges they've had and successes they've had. So that is why he's absent today. All right, seeing no other miscellaneous, we are adjourned.
I am Kent County. I am Kent County.
I am Kent County.
We are 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 Kent County.
Beya, Kent County. Ami, Kent County.
Somos Kent County.
Mas Ira, Kent County.
We are Kent County. We are Kent County. We are Kent County. Oh yeah.